Well, hello there. So I am on an early fall, kind of late season backpacking trip where I'm probably going to face some colder weather. I have with me a fairly critical piece of gear that I bought strictly on a viewer's recommendation. So if it sucks, you're going to hear about it. Or maybe not, but probably yes. So I am typically the guy who does all the research. I read all the reviews. In particular, I like to read the negative reviews. I want to know what the one-star people have to say. And I didn't do that on this trip. I watched one YouTube video from a trusted YouTuber, Justin Outdoors, and I read a recommendation from someone who watched my last video, my best and worst of 2025. So, a few days after that comment, I went out and I bought the piece of gear that this viewer recommended. And now I'm out in the backcountry and I'm going to use it. All right, well, I have found a campsite and I'm ready to tell you what sleeping pad I'm carrying that was recommended by a viewer. And it is the REI Helix insulated. I have the regular wide. So let's get it set up and give you my first impressions. So a couple of things right out of the gate that I like. The inflation valve and the dump valve are on the bottom of the pad. So instead of being up at the top by your pillow, they're underneath where they won't rub on you or bother you in the middle of the night. Not that that's been a huge problem with any pad that I've owned, but I think it's kind of innovative to put them on the bottom. I did find it interesting that there is an inflation valve and then a separate dump valve instead of kind of the 2-in-1 that you see on most pads these days. But I guess that's kind of neither here nor there. Just observation. Something else that I like just straight away is the material. It's a 30 denier ripstop polyester as opposed to a nylon that you see on most pads. And it's quite a bit softer. It does have a TPU coating to give it some extra durability and just kind of tensile strength. But it doesn't feel plasticky. It doesn't feel rubbery. It feels fairly soft, which I think, especially in the warmer months, will come in to play. You know, it won't be, hopefully, it won't be like as sweaty and sticky because it's not that kind of rubbery nylon feel that you get from a lot of sleeping pads. Now, it is heavier than the Nemo pad that it is potentially replacing. We'll see how I sleep on it before I make that call. But on my scale at home, my Nemo all season with the inflation sack and the Velcro strap to kind of hold it all together weighed 600 grams. And this came in at about 760. So a little bit heavier. It does have a slightly lower R value. The Nemo pad, I believe, is a 5.4, and this is a 4.9. So not as much insulation, but the numbers are fairly close. I don't know. I feel like that's going to be a negligible difference, but only time will tell. So those are the things just right out of the gate that I really like. I do prefer a quilted pattern as opposed to baffles, whether they be horizontal or vertical. I do find that I sleep better on a quilted design, which this has a quilted design. When I bought the Nemo pad, I had kind of a checklist of things, and any pad I was going to buy had to meet a certain amount of those criteria. One of those criteria was that it needed to be at or around 21 ounces. So that immediately ruled this pad out because it's about 27 ounces. So kind of prematurely took this one off the list, and sitting on it now, having it inflated, feeling it under my skin, maybe that was a mistake. I'm actually kind of excited. This pad might work out really well. It is comfortable just sitting on it. I'm not bottoming out. It's only inflated probably about 75%, and I still have enough cushion even sitting up that my butt isn't touching the ground. I can still feel the pad underneath me. So that's pretty cool. One concern I do have about this pad is that it's only 24 inches wide. I'm typically used to a 25-inch wide pad, so I don't know how much of a difference, if any, that missing inch will make, but we will find out. So the things I'm going to be testing tonight, the things I'm going to be looking for, stability is number one. And what I mean by that is how far to each edge can I roll my body before I feel like I'm going to fall off the pad. That was an area where the Nemo pad was excellent. I could sleep all the way to the very edge of the pad if I had to, and I never felt like I was going to fall off. It didn't feel less comfortable in any given spot. You know, a lot of sleeping pads, you kind of have to stay in the sweet spot. You kind of have to stay in the middle where it feels kind of wonky, and the Nemo didn't. So that is something I'm going to be looking for with the Helix. The other factor that I want to test is, does it keep me warm? You know, the whole reason you buy an insulated pad is to insulate you from cold coming up from the ground. So I'm going to be paying attention to, you know, do I have any cold spots? How long does it take the pad to warm up? Does it keep me warm all night long? It's supposed to get down into the 30s tonight, the low 30s. And I have my 20-degree Enlightened Equipment quilt with me to pair with the insulated pad. So I will be curious to see if I stay warm enough tonight. And then the last criteria that I'll be testing is just how well do I sleep on it? You know, with the Nemo pad, I woke up every 2 or 3 hours, sometimes more, with like my shoulder feeling like it was falling asleep, my hips hurting, things like that. And so with this pad, you know, as a side sleeper, am I going to be able to make it all the way through the night without waking up and having to roll around and resituate myself and find, you know, that sweet spot to make myself comfortable again? One of the main issues I had with the Nemo was that I would wake up multiple times throughout the night. You know, I'd fall asleep on my right side, then my right shoulder and right arm would kind of feel like they were falling asleep, so I had to roll over, resituate myself, sleep on the left side. 2 or 3 hours in, that side would start to hurt. So then I had to kind of lay on my back for a little while and let both sides relax and go back to normal, and then start the whole cycle over again on my right side. So I would wake up 5, 6, sometimes 7 times a night just to roll around, resituate myself, and try to get comfortable enough to fall back to sleep. So one of the main criteria I'm looking for in a new pad is, do I sleep through the whole night? So those are the main criteria: stability, warmth, comfort. I think it's time to start getting my dinner made, get some sleep, and I will check in with you all in the morning and let you know how the pad performed. Well, good morning. I slept really well last night. I enjoy this pad. So the 3 main criteria that I was testing for last night on this first trip out were stability, warmth, and just overall comfort. In terms of stability, it gets a 10 out of 10. I tried really hard. Like, I rolled all the way as far as I could to the left, all the way as far as I could to the right, and tried to find a space where the support collapsed or failed, you know, where it felt like I might roll off the pad. And I couldn't find that spot. Anywhere I laid on the pad, it felt like it had equal support across 100% of the pad. So 10 out of 10, very stable pad. In terms of warmth, I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. The lowest temperature that my thermostat recorded last night was 44 degrees Fahrenheit. And at around 4 o'clock in the morning, I had to kind of get up and answer nature's call, if you know what I mean. And when I got back into my quilt, you know, the pad had lost some of its heat, which is normal. So I figured, I'll just lay here a bit. My body temperature will warm the pad back up, and everything will be back to normal. And it did warm it up a little bit, but I think because the ground temperature was so cold, the pad never got back up to
the temperature that it was when, when I went to bed last night. It stayed just a little on the cold side, and there were a couple of cold spots here and there. So I probably wouldn't take this pad out much colder than 40 degrees Fahrenheit without supplementing it with like a closed cell foam for a little extra protection from the cold just from the ground seeping up and stealing the heat. In terms of overall comfort, I'm probably gonna go 8 out of 10 again. It was comfortable. I enjoyed my sleep. It's probably the best sleep I've had this year because I've been carrying that Nemo all season, all year, and have not slept well on it. It just wasn't as comfortable as I wanted it to be, and I don't have a way to really articulate that. It's comfy. It is. I like the quilted top. I like the fabric that it's made out of. I slept really well on it. I just feel like there's room for improvement. So overall, the whole pad, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10 because it was very stable. It was warm enough for the conditions I was in last night, but I don't think it would be warm in conditions any cooler than that. And it was pretty comfortable. I think a lot of the comfort issue is that I'm comparing it still to the Sea to Summit XT, which was my favorite pad until it failed on me. And I think what that's telling me is I need to try the new Sea to Summit XR. Apparently they have resolved the delamination issue by making the welds an oval shape as opposed to a round shape. So at some point I may try that, but I'm going to keep this one for a little while and keep testing it, keep trying it out. My first night on it, my first impression, pretty good. I enjoyed the pad. I slept well on it. If you're looking for something that is comfortable, reasonably lightweight, and less expensive than some of the other brands, this one set me back $170. By comparison, the Sea to Summit XR and the Nemo Tensor are both closer to like the $250 range. So if you're looking for something that's comfortable, it's warm enough for most trips, and is just a little less expensive, the REI Helix is a good choice. I am not mad that I own this pad.